Palestinians in Gaza have been streaming onto the streets after a 12-hour pause in hostilities came into effect earlier today. Some neighbourhoods have been destroyed by recent Israeli shelling. In other places, banks and shops have reopened. Gaza health officials say dozens of bodies have been recovered by the emergency services since the truce began. The official death toll now stands at 940, most of them civilians. The BBC's Chris Morris has been to one of the worst affected areas, and Chris joins us live now from there. And Chris, what's the latest? How are people where you are dealing with what is now a few hours into the 12-hour truce?
I think the main thing for people here is to try and get stuff done, which they haven't been able to do for more than 2 weeks now. It's day 19 since the Israeli offensive began, more than a week since the ground offensive began, and for tens of thousands of people this is the first time they've been able to go back to their homes in days to see what remains. Here in Gaza City, you're right, it's people going to the shops, going to banks to get out money when they can. But in border areas down near Khan Yunis, up in the north near Beit Hanun, and east of here in neighbourhoods like Shejair, it's really people going back to retrieve belongings and see what's left of their homes. And it was in Shejair that I spent this morning.
As soon as the guns fell silent, they started pouring into Shejair. Thousands of people. It was difficult to come to terms with what they found. Abdul Karim Harara has come back to his house on Nazaz Street, or at least what's left of it. 8 members of his family lived here, their belongings now scattered on the ground. In the last 2 wars, Shejair was a safe place, Abdul Karim says, but this time it's completely destroyed. I've never seen anything like this before. On the other side of the street, Ali Nawati is helping his brother Jamal clear everything out of his house, piling it on top of the car to take it somewhere safer. Inside, part of a mortar found on the porch, along with more familiar everyday things lying on the floor. Even the cupboard doors are coming off. They're not taking any chances, but still there are flashes of defiance. They can destroy all this 100 times, Jamal says, and we'll rebuild it 100 times. We need to live in dignity or die. As Israel and Hamas have attacked each other, there's no question that Palestinian civilians have suffered disproportionate pain.
This humanitarian ceasefire is only due to last for 12 hours. No one knows whether it's going to be extended. And that's why people have come in to grab what they can while they can. They don't know when they'll be back.
A body has been found. It's carried away for burial. Dozens have already been recovered from the rubble. And on the edge of Shejair, the Israeli army, still poised. Israel says this neighborhood was Hamas's command and control center, full of tunnels and rocket launching sites. But for most people, it was simply home.
So the big question now, is this more than simply a 12-hour pause in the conflict? Will hostilities resume? Certainly they were ongoing until just before 8 o'clock this morning local time, when the truce began. We saw Hamas firing rockets towards Israel late yesterday, and just a couple of hours before hostilities ceased, the Palestinian Health Ministry here in Gaza said 18 members of one family died in Israeli tank fire down in Khan Yunis. Now, diplomats are certainly working feverishly on this. John Kerry, the American Secretary of State, is leading other foreign ministers at a meeting in Paris. But we've heard some pretty tough rhetoric from both sides. The Israeli Defense Ministry saying that it may be that the ground offensive has to be expanded significantly, and also from Hamas saying if we don't get a permanent lifting of the siege of Gaza, then the fight against Israel goes on.
OK, Chris Morris, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's speak now to Danny Yatem. He's a former head of Mossad and joins us now from Modi'in, which lies northwest of Jerusalem near the West Bank. Danny Yatem, some 940 Palestinians have died since this conflict began. 185 children, 93 women. When is this going to end?
I hope that it is going to end as soon as possible. And we regret, and I myself regret, each and every of an innocent Palestinian or an innocent Israeli that was killed. But we have to understand that as any other democratic state, our main target and responsibility is to provide security to our people, and no one can sit idle while the population of Israel is poured by hundreds and thousands of rockets, unfortunately fired from deployed places in a highly populated area.
Okay, so tell me,
if to blame somebody is the Hamas.
Okay, forgive me, but do Israelis feel more secure now than they did before the 8th of July?
I think that, the mood in Israel is very high, and the sense is solidarity is very strong. As a matter of fact, the Israeli people, most of the Israeli people, are pushing the government to continue and to penetrate even more into the Gaza in order to try and to bring an end once and for all to the rounds of clashes and rockets that we are witnessing during the last 14 years. So I think that today the Israeli people are even more hawkish than our government.
I mean, the problem here is, isn't it, is the fact that it's almost impossible to conduct any sort of forensic attack on an area that's so densely populated. Let's take, for example, the attack on the UN school on Thursday. So many innocent civilians are dying in this. How can you say that there is consensus in Israel to what looks like disproportionate violence?
The consensus is due to the fact that Israeli population is suffering during the last 14 years from shellings of rockets and
So how many Israelis have died in the last 14 years then?
Well, we have very good defensive systems, and we don't need many Israelis to die in order to be on the right place, meaningly we retaliated. I just want to mention again that Hamas was the one that initiated this round. We deliberately did not fire back. We showed a lot of restraint. Twice we agreed to a truce. Twice Hamas did not agree to a truce. So you have to ask those questions first and foremost, the Hamas and mainly the leaders of Hamas, which are enjoying very nice life in Qatar and some other places.
OK, what Hamas are and aren't doing isn't in question here. What is in question here is the kind of life being lived through at the moment by 1.8 million people living in a tiny strip of land, densely populated, and being bombarded on an hourly basis. A child per hour is dying here. When is it going to end?
I hope that it is going to end as soon as possible. I hope that this truce of 12 hours will be extended. And I hope that at the end it will bring to a permanent truce where we will be able to sit, yes, in different rooms, while the Hamas representatives will sit in another room and deal about the conditions for permanent ceasefire. But we have to understand that before even being ready to leave the Gaza, we will have to accomplish the destroy and the dismantle of all the tunnels, attacking tunnels that were dug during years with the aim to send death squads through those tunnels in order to kill innocent Israeli people.
OK, Danny Atom, I do thank you for answering our questions here on BBC World News.
You're welcome.
So we're talking about the truce. What about those diplomatic efforts to extend it? Foreign ministers from the US, several EU countries, Turkey and Qatar are currently meeting in Paris to discuss ways of achieving a longer truce in Gaza. Well, let's talk now to Hugh Schofield, who is in Paris for us. And Hugh, without Hamas, without Israel there, how meaningful are these talks?
Well, I mean, there are big players here. There's John Kerry, there are the Europeans, the British Foreign Secretary, the French Foreign Minister. But as you say, there aren't the Israelis and there aren't Hamas, so this is not going to be the forum where a breakthrough is announced. I think all they can meaningfully do is show that the international community is there and ready to step in to form a kind of framework for an agreement when the time is right. The time may soon be right, but it won't be decided by the players here. It'll be decided by Israel and Hamas, in particular by Israel, as we were hearing then, when it feels it's done what it needs to do to block the tunnels, destroy the tunnels, and end what it sees as this threat to its ongoing civilian life.
And Hugh, what are the main sticking points right now, do you think, that are stopping some sort of consensus moving forward?
Well, we know what the sticking points are. Neither party is ready. That the Israelis don't feel they've finished doing their job. Now they're in the Gaza Strip. They are saying, well, we might as well finish the job properly. And I think that may well mean that this lasts 2 or 3 or 4 more days. I don't know how long, but the sense that they're there, they've made a lot of effort to get where they are now. They might as well finish the job. That may well mean this extends the period of hostilities longer than it might have done. On the other side, of course, Hamas wants some kind of guarantee that the blockade and its issues are on the table, and that's not forthcoming either. There will be a moment, and it will come probably relatively soon, when it stops. It's happened before, it will stop, but it hasn't happened yet, and it won't be here in Paris that decision is made.
OK, Hugh Schofield, thank you very much indeed for that update.